So it's the Monster Squad. It came out in 1987. It was from the writer of Lethal Weapon. He co-wrote it with the director of Night of the Creeps.
Yep.
And Fred Dekker, who's like a genius, and I can't believe he's not a bigger force in the entertainment industry. And it's basically the Goonie. It's sort of the Little Rascals meets Universal Monsters.
Yes.
Stan Winston was promised if he signed on for effects that he could use the actual Universal designs, and right at the last minute they yanked it from him. So he had to redesign the creatures, but they look enough like the originals that you can tell what they're going for.
Why the hell would they do that?
Universal has a lot invested in those creatures, especially at the time they had their Universal Studio stuff tied into the monsters a little bit more, I think.
Yeah.
And
wouldn't the movie have just been really good advertising for all that?
Well, as it turns out, not so much.
Well, they've gotten behind it a little bit more.
Maybe. If it had come out a couple weeks later and advertised as from the writer of Lethal Weapon, that might have helped.
Yeah.
I mean, the film itself, I remember that particular era, and I remember a mutual friend of John and I's, Jim Aid, who had gone to go see it in the theater, and he was just glowing all over this film. And he just, from out of nowhere, we were doing something, and Jim went, "Wolfman's got nards," and I went, "What the fuck are you talking about?"
Yeah.
And he explained Monster Squad to me, and by the time that he had explained it to me, it had already left the theater. But I remember sitting down and loving watching it on VHS, and then, like so many things, it kind of drifts away. And then I sat down and rewatched it, and I remembered, oh my God, this is such a fun film.
I saw it in the theater the opening weekend of release with my cousin Margie. Everybody else was going to see Who's That Girl or something, and we're like, nope, we're going to watch Monsters. And I was telling everybody how great it was. Nobody listened. And I'm still trying to get people to watch it, and I can't make them watch it. But I figured I could make you guys watch it because we have an agreement.
Yeah, and you make me watch it.
Yeah, John did not like it.
Really?
Oh, okay. It's the dating of it. So I think that if somebody would have convinced me to watch it back in the 80s, I would have loved it right up there with, the Stand By Me's, and I probably would have even enjoyed it about 3/4 as much as The Lost Boys and things like that. Watching it now, I have to put on my 80s hat to watch it.
Yeah, because there's some stuff that definitely dates that film.
Oh, yeah. I think the biggest problem that I have with it, of course, now is just the language. Because
some of the language is upsetting because there's some stuff that
there's a lot of slurs
would not fly today,
right?
But it also has an anti-bullying message. So
yeah, I mean, all the people who wind up throwing around those slurs, especially those kids at the beginning, in a sense, get theirs. It kind of turns into a morality play, because I love the fact that Horace, the fat kid who's getting picked on at the end, takes care of one of the monsters, turns around and sees two of the tormentors there, and they're like, "Hey, you!" And he just clicks the shotgun and goes, "My name is Horace."
Yeah, they call him. Yeah, even his friends call him Fat Kid through the whole thing, which is kind of mean.
But I think it's also that particular. You're talking about that particular part of your childhood where you're pretty much all id, and you're trying to experience, everything, and trying to be bigger and stronger than what you really are, and it really shows through in all of this. So let's go into a synopsis of the film, because we haven't done that yet.
It's about a bunch of kids who like monsters and set up a monster club, and they decorate their treehouse with monster stuff. And then
by the way, best treehouse ever.
Yes. One of the kid's parents is a cop, and he overhears his dad saying, "Look, the mom is all pissy because he spends a lot of time at work. He's like, do you know what I went through at work today? Some guy claimed to be a werewolf, and they shot him right in front of me." And
Turns out he's a real fucking werewolf.
he's a real werewolf. There's a werewolf, there's a creature from the Black Lagoon, there's a mummy, and there's Dracula. The only one who's out and out evil, I guess, is Dracula. He has actual plans to. The creature is kind of a slave to Dracula. Mummy is just a mindless tool. Frankenstein, in probably the most subversive, in a good way, scene in the movie. If anybody who's seen the 1933
Frankenstein's monster.
Yeah.
Frankenstein's monster, when he comes across that little girl by the pond, he throws her in and kills her. Well, in this movie, they make friends. She brings him back to the Monster Club, and when all of her brothers and friends are scared of him, she says, "Oh, don't be a chicken shit."
That girl, by the way, owns every scene she's in. She's so good.
Yeah.
And the casting in this film is perfect.
Yes.
Everybody in this film absolutely works and owns it.
Mm-hmm.
I think and even to stuff like the guy who's playing Dracula, which could have very easily been a caricature thing,
Mm-hmm.
but you see he really put some thought and energy into it. And Tom Noonan, who plays Frankenstein's monster, I've yet to see a film that he's not good in.
Yeah, he might be my favorite Frankenstein monster of any movie. Because when he kills Dracula, he actually just says bogus, pushes him. I don't know. I mean, I don't really have to put an 80s hat on to enjoy the movie. I can see having to put the 80s hat on to tolerate some of the bullshit stuff that's in there. But
I mean, they can go into that in the other film that we'll likely end up discussing because they obviously cross with each other.
Mm.
But in the Wolfman's Got Nards documentary, they show a professor at Cal State Fullerton teaching the film to his class, and he has the lead actors from the film there.
Mm-hmm.
And they go into, hey, what would we change if we did the film differently this time around? And he's like, okay, well, obviously we dropped the slurs and this and that, and you do have to view it as an artifact of its time. And then we'd probably end up making Phoebe the leader of the gang, the 5-year-old sister. And I'm like, actually, go back and write that script. I want to see that.
Well, I mean, it goes to like something that you guys are a little more into than I am. I like him too, but Lovecraft, he's got troublesome art.
Yeah.
H.
Guy actually has a great video about that.
I actually forgot about all that stuff until I watched it again. I'm like, ooh, that's cringeworthy, But
I kind of had a feeling that you had forgotten about that stuff because when you mentioned it, I was very surprised that when you chose it, I was very surprised you chose it. But then I thought to myself, nah, he probably forgot that it was filled with stuff that is
it's front loaded. Most of that stuff happens in the first reel or so.
Yeah. But it does also help to set up where the characters are in terms of how they relate to the people around them.
Oh, back to the synopsis though.
Yeah.
Okay. So they start a monster club. They're trying to get an amulet that Dracula wants to get hold of so he can open up a wormhole in the fabric of space and time and suck Earth into this alternate reality. He's brought back a bunch of
Ravenloft.
Okay.
Yeah.
He's brought a bunch of monsters together to make it happen. The kids are scared of a guy in a little house in the neighborhood. They call him Scary German Guy, and he's the only one that can speak German. The book that they use to find the amulet is written in German, so they take it to him. And he translates for them and becomes sort of a de facto sidekick.
He also gets it's arguably my favorite little moment in the film. When they get done with him translating the book and they're leaving, they said, wow, you really know an awful lot about monsters. And he's like, yeah, I probably know more than most about monsters. And he shuts his door, and then they do a shot of him, and there's a concentration camp tattoo on his arm. And you're like, yeah, dude, you know more than most about monsters. I got to give you that.
Yeah. And I thought that was a very, very well contrasted nod, or not nod, because you don't nod stuff like that, but it was a very good
I,
contrast to the language that we hear at the beginning.
well, that's
Oh, yeah.
why I'm of two. I mean, that's why that's so weird to me, because it almost seems like the writers thematically are going for how we would feel about those things, you know.
Yeah.
But I don't know if they're clumsy or if it just doesn't translate. But there's definitely a sense through the whole movie that they're on the side of the outsiders throughout. And even the little girl is an outsider in the Monster
Yeah.
Club, and she has to kind of get her way in by making friends with Frankenstein and saying,
Yeah, she
"Screw you
actually,
guys! I brought a monster home with
yeah,
me.
she
This
actually
enough
had
to
to
get
go
me
as
in the club?"
yeah, that's it. Yeah, exactly. She had to go as far as actually finding a monster to get accepted by them.
Yeah.
Uh,
But I
So,
mean, you just look at the film, and by the time you get to the end, you've been given this great ride that feels like a great kind of like child's adventure story, and but it's got a real heart to it. It's got some genuine feeling to it, and
mm,
that's the part that absolutely grabbed me. And it's something that I like about Shane Black's work is that he really does. I mean, the story is very important and the action is very important, but the thing that he understands, I think, more than most is that in order for the action to work and to have the characters be in peril for the action to work, you have to give a shit about the characters.
mhm.
So watching them all getting bullied at the beginning and the way that they get treated helps you to really, really enjoy the ending when they are the goddamn heroes. And, you know, it makes it
right,
work for me on that level.
right.
Yeah, I mean, they're when if you watch that documentary that Wolfman's Got Nards, this movie really resonates with people who have been bullied. There's people when they did those Alamo Draft House screenings, there were people in tears because they got to meet the actors and stuff like that, because they're like saying that this movie helped them through some of the hardest times of their life.
Yeah,
And like when I see it, I don't see that, but after I saw that documentary, I kind of see it a little differently.
yeah.
Yeah.
And I almost think that the preservation of movies in their original forms are somewhat important now because of those things.
Yeah.
Because when you watch something like that, you almost hope that people cringe. You
Yeah.
do. I hope that when people see that kind of bullying, that any kind of bullying, but really that specifically, even that they do cringe, and it's important that people cringe and see that, because if they change the movie so that it was a lot more morally acceptable, it really wouldn't give you a picture into what was acceptable back in the 80s, and how far we've hopefully come to a certain point that
With any luck, yeah.
that at least a larger percentage of people find that stuff offensive and won't allow that kind of stuff to go on.
Like you said, a person should watch those scenes and they should cringe, and it should almost be a test of the person you're watching it with to see if they
Yeah.
cringe.
Yeah.
Yeah, if you hear
But
them uttering the words under their breath going, yeah, yeah.
You
Yeah.
know, and to me, I think that this, as much as this film is in some ways a relic of its time, throwing around various slurs or this or that, or the fact that the fat kid gets picked on, and all the other stuff that goes on in that film. In the end, it's also very much a morality tale. The people who stick together with their friendship and holding through all the midst of this are the ones who wind up saving the world and becoming the heroes of the entire situation. And then the kids who were throwing around the slurs and, being mean and all this other stuff. Yeah, you know what? They're the ones cowering behind a corner who are total cowards and got nothing.
and let's
And to me, I
remember,
think that's the most telling part. If the film sympathized with the people throwing around slurs, that would be a whole different game, and I would have been like, I'd be sitting there going, no, it was great right up until the end when you gave the wrong people the right credit.
Yeah.
well,
Yeah, very true.
And I give it a lot of credit because of the Frankenstein monster in the original movie. That's the reason the villagers came after him, because he was completely immature, didn't understand that if you threw the girl in the water, she would die.
Yeah.
So he killed her, but he didn't intend to. And the villagers came after him. And this movie, none of that happens. It's almost like it's almost like giving Frankenstein a second chance to not do the thing that caused the villagers to come after him.
I always enjoy it when Frankenstein's monster is portrayed as a misunderstood gentle giant.
Yeah.
I've always really enjoyed that aspect of, when somebody writes him like that.
And when he sings "Putting on the Ritz."
Oh
Oh
yeah,
yeah.
yeah, exactly.
The reason I picked this because I thought it was a lighthearted, fun movie, and here we are.
Hi,
Yeah.
it's me. I'm Captain Subtext, and I drug everybody in on it. Yep, there we go.
Yep. So
Uh,
after they visit scary German guy,
Oh yeah, we're still back at
what happens? What happens next?
The sister finds Frankenstein's monster and brings him along, and then there's all of them figuring out, hey, this is the stuff that's going on, and Dracula's got all of this stuff planned, and they begin to make their counter plan. And there's a great scene where you see them doing the preparation, and here's where, I mean, Rudy, who is the anti-bully character, who's like, your quintessential tough guy, junior high kid, walking around in a leather motorcycle jacket, riding around on his bicycle, and he's going around and he's doing things like making a silver bullet. And
Yeah, he doesn't know how to do this stuff. So they just say, "Yeah, we need a silver bullet." He's like, "I guess I'm the guy to do it."
yeah.
Like,
And then he's
okay,
like
I'll
grinding
figure it
out steaks and stealing bows and arrows and stuff. And I'm like, yeah, you go, Rudy. Yeah.
Well, I mean, he's the one that forced the bully to eat candy bar off the ground after.
Yeah, I love that. That to me was just rewards. And that's where I kind of started to think to myself, maybe the message is right. Just the delivery is currently in 2020 cringe.
It's a little blunt for this era, but for the beginning, for that particular period of time, it was a bit forward thinking,
Yeah. And the more I think about it, as we're discussing it, the more I almost think that that Dan's right as far as and you're right as far as the forward thinkingness of the movie. I was just so stunned and cringing and offended that when I was seeing that all happening, that it's very easy to be triggered by something like that and to not be able to get past it. But in retrospect, what you guys are saying is making a lot of sense.
And then, of course, we have them assaulting Dracula's castle, which is really entertaining to watch a group of small children assaulting a castle. And at the same time, the Wolfman calls up while he's still in human form to tell one of the kids' fathers that their child's in danger, and then he transforms. Then we have, the Wolfman busting back into Dracula's castle as the kids are trying to get in, where we get the famous moment of Wolfman's got nards.
Kick him in the nards. Wolfman doesn't have nards. Kick him in the
nards. Wolfman's got nards.
There's a TV show where they use the word nards all the time. They mention that in the documentary. And that's because of that movie.
And also, this is Goldberg's is also the same TV show that gave us the Highlander Club, where they have Clancy Brown, being the shop teacher in there, and he winds up being the faculty advisor for the Highlander Club. I mean, clearly this is a show that was meant for all of us because it's about films and uber nerds, but we're getting back to the movie we're talking about. Mm-hmm. So anyway, they get their hands on the amulet and they go to a church. In the meantime, and they are saved and I love the fact that he's credited as Scary German Guy in the film. Mm-hmm. And they begin the process of the ritual. Dad comes along. Dracula comes along and blows up the Monster Squad's clubhouse, and then also blows up Dad's police car with his partner still in it. And then the Monster Squad itself goes to the church, begins the ritual. They think that they have a virgin because the virgin is necessary for this, but it turns out she wasn't really a virgin, but she only did it that one time with Steve. But
he doesn't count.
Yeah, he doesn't count. So they wind up with Phoebe being the one reading it, as the German man is reading the words to her and she's reading them back. And the world is eventually saved, although there's a very touching scene where Phoebe's trying to save Frankenstein's monster, and it's really very touching.
Yes, I thought so too.
And
Um,
I love how they assume that the ritual requires a female virgin, because
yeah, they have
Any one of
tons of, yeah, any one of the
all
guys.
of them are virgins, for
Yeah.
crying out loud.
Well, this movie is probably the only movie in history where a vampire is staring at a 5-year-old girl in the face and calls her a bitch.
and apparently they hadn't told her that was coming.
Yeah, she screamed pretty loud.
Yeah.
It was just a fun movie to me. It's like the Goonies with monsters.
Yeah.
Um, so I'm a press play for it.
I am-
You should also check out Wolfman's Got Nards if you have Amazon. You can rent it for a couple bucks. It actually will make you appreciate the movie even more.
Yeah, I actually broke down and bought it. I just took one look at the trailer and went, sometimes you want to have that film where you did a thing and then it didn't do very well, and so you kind of escaped from it. And then 20 years later, you find out that you're an underground hit.
Yeah,
And
Shane,
watching everybody's reaction to that is awesome.
it's weird because the cast members who are on this tour and get to meet all these people whose lives they affected are really moved. And the writer and director who made the thing, who hasn't done that, is still sitting there in his house going, yeah, I made it. It bobbed. And now people are coming up to me 20 years later, and it's like doing a piano concerto and having it be really great, and nobody claps. And then 20 years later, they come up to you and tell you it was great.
His comment I thought was really great. I thought was, it's like, shooting a basket in 1987 and then it finally sinks in 2006.
Yeah.
That's a perfect way of saying it.
Had he been able to, I think he should have gone on that tour with them, because then he would have realized, that something he made had affected so many people.
It's a good point, not to brood on things you view as failures.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
And to me, I think that's the important thing. I will say it before and say it again. Having worked on short films and other people's productions and such, I mean, you really have no idea the sheer amount of effort it takes to work on a film set, let alone be the director. And so I respect anybody who does it. I mean, will I give Tommy Wiseau a hard time for writing a crappy film? Yes. Will I credit Tommy Wiseau for finishing his first ever feature film on the first try? Yes. And that's something that I think that when you sit there and you put all of that effort into it and it tanks as hard as that film did, you have that feeling of, well, why should I bother doing this again? And you get the feeling that the director, it really took him a while to recover from having such an epic failure. But the irony is that it's a failure in a commercial sense, but on every other level it succeeded. And once the audience caught up to it, all of a sudden everybody realized, holy shit, there was an incredible diamond that we all missed sifting through all of this stuff.
There's like
now, of course, Dave's not referencing The Room there. He's talking about our subject film, which is Monster Squad, right?
Yeah, right.
Well,
Okay.
Yeah.
The Room is not a diamond in the rough.
The Room is okay. I mean,
The Room
Monster
is-
Squad is a diamond in the rough. The Room is kind of a turd that keeps trying to get polished and it never works.
but everybody likes it.
But everybody likes it because it's so ridiculous.
Yeah, and hey, if you want to sit there and absolutely enjoy it, knock yourself out. I don't get it, but hey, there's a lot of other shit I don't get. I give him credit for getting the work done.
Quentin Tarantino, his biggest failure was Death Proof, Grindhouse, and everything like that.
Which
But
I love.
I loved it too. But when he was talking to the people making that movie, he's like, "What if it doesn't do well?" He says, "Well, I'm not making it for the people going to the theater to see it now. I'm really making it for the kid who rents it 20 years from now."
Yeah.
Goes, "What the fuck am I watching?" That's the person I'm making this movie for.
Considering that Tarantino worked at a video store and that was pretty much him, I think he understood exactly what he was doing.
Yeah,
and the casting in it is amazing, and I love it. But anyway, getting back to the film that we were talking about, or the documentary, thinking about it, Wolfman's Got Nards is the perfect companion piece to this, because talking to the director and the actors and the effects people and seeing the sheer amount of work that went into it, some of which had never really been done before. Like the guy who designed the Gillman suit for
Woodruff, he actually later worked on Alien 3, and He's like a major effects guy now. But that was
But his most famous piece of work is that he did a very similar suit for the Guillermo del Toro film.
He didn't do that suit. The other guy did. But yeah.
Okay, Shape of Water.
Mhm.
But considering the number of people who really got their start, who are now massive in this business,
Mhm.
and to me, I think that's kind of the important part. Is sometimes you sit there and you make a piece of art, and it becomes the groundwork for a lot of other people to make even more amazing pieces of art.
Mhm.
And you know, Monster Squad to me is one of those ones where I sit down and I watch it, and I feel like I've been transported back to a time in my childhood where we used to go out and just do midnight raids on places and do crazy stuff, because that's what childhood is for. That because of that, that's why the film has such a successful run now. All of us who were kids back then look at it and recognize our childhoods, and there's a moment of it's that transitional moment when you're taking your first couple of steps, kind of looking at adulthood from a distance. But
So-
yeah, to me, this film is a definite press play. It really made me like I was smiling all the way through this film. It hit all the storytelling notes in there. I love the way that the characters were put to work in this particular film. I love that there were certain twists and such and elements of the characters that really stood out for me all along. Is it a perfect film? No. But does it come close in spots? Yeah. I mean, this is something that, you know, I would love to see Dekker follow up doing some more stuff like this at some point.
Night of the Creeps is amazing too.
Yeah.
I love that film.
Yep.
So yeah, I'll say I'm going to give it a press play with disclaimers. That you know, if you're triggered by homophobia and you know, that sort of thing, then you know, go into the film knowing that.
Yeah.
But it's a good film, and now that we've discussed it, I'm confident in giving it a press play and saying yes, go see it, but be ready that if you are sensitive to that, then you will be triggered, like I was. But if you can watch the whole film and think about some of the things that were discussed today, you'll enjoy it.
It's an absolute win all across the board for me. So yeah, highly recommend it. Help to expand the cult on this film because it really deserves it.